the Republicans and the Democrats in the House and in the Senate, none of them want to give up the system.
Tonight you'll see someone sleeping in that shelter there where you catch the bus. That's how they survived the night.
Yes, who are they going to listen to? Not to us. The only way there's everything going to happen is because you have done it every single day of the week.
I don't need nobody to make me happy.
Well, we met about, I guess it's almost 9 years ago now, through a mutual friend. Shortly after I was coming out, actually, and looking to meet people, and I met Paul, and there was some chemistry, and things have worked out for us.
And maybe you can answer this one. When did you first know that you were gay?
I knew I was gay. I mean, I knew I was gay for a fact. About the age of 11 or 12, there was a new word going around the neighborhood, and all the boys were using it. And the word was fag. And like all little kids, you learn to conjugate your new swear words. I'm a fag, you're a fag, we're a fag too. And I asked one of the older boys what it meant. And he told me. And when I heard it, I was like, oh my, that's me. So I actually put it, about 11 or 12 years old, I actually put it all together at that age and said, you know, this liking the other boys is really serious for me, and this being gay meshes with who I am. And all of a sudden I knew it was not a good thing, and I immediately went into the closet, and I lived in the closet, hiding my sexuality until I was almost 40 years old. And at that point I came out and started to become active in the community and started to discover who I am as a person. And fortunately, within like 2 years, I met Todd, and I've had a great and wonderful life ever since.
So what advice would you maybe give to kids that aren't able to kind of break through that barrier? Because it's often most difficult. You never hear of kids coming out. I mean, you very rarely hear of kids coming out at age 5, 6, 7, or 8 or 9.
I would be shocked if a kid came out at 5, 6, 7. At that age, most kids have no idea about sexuality or what that even means. But if a child of 13, 14, or 15 started understanding, who they were attracted to, that would seem more natural to me about that age. And my suggestion to those children is that they really need to find out who their champions are before they do anything. They need to look for their role models and supportive adults and people who can help them through the process. They can turn to their mom and dad if their mom and dad are supportive. It might be an uncle who's supportive. It might be a teacher. It might be a minister or a clergyman. You need to have the support in someone you think is safe to talk to, and then proceed from there. But that initial support from an adult is all important.
Now, you guys are both actively working on issues, gay rights issues, and marriage rights on a political level or an organizational level. And do you think, first of all, I want to ask you, what is the difference between a civil union and marriage?
That's a great question, actually. There are a couple states in America, Connecticut and Vermont, that have made provision for civil unions, which provide generally the same rights that married couples get in those states, state rights. And depending on the state, they range from 500 to 700 different rights and responsibilities. Now in Massachusetts, couples there who live there or intend to live there can get married and have marriage, full marriage, as the same as opposite sex couples. And some progress is being made incrementally in other states where there's other provisions that provide some of the benefits, but they're limited. And the reason, in my role, I currently serve as the field organizer for marriage equality for Western New York. And part of what I try to emphasize when talking to people about civil unions versus marriage is that civil unions is offering an alternative, and we've learned historically that separate but equal is inherently unequal. In essence, we're saying that same-sex couples are being devalued, that they don't deserve marriage, and that sends a negative message. And also, it's important to make a distinction between civil marriage, which is what you get when you obtain your marriage license, or in a ceremony when, whether it's a minister or a justice of the peace, when that person says, by the power invested me by the state of New York, I pronounce you husband and wife, or husband and husband, hopefully someday, here in New York, that's when you are given or bestowed all of those civil rights. And so by being refused marriage, we are being denied all of those rights, which are extensive and relate to matters of, inheritance, adoption rights, parental rights, and then, of course, on the federal level, that's a whole other conversation. There's over 1,000 rights and responsibilities. And that's, obviously, it's going to take more time to win the federal rights. Right now, we're focused on the fight here in New York State in winning marriage.
My answer to that question is that if my sister and her boyfriend came in and announced to mom and dad that they were going to have a civil union, people would go, what? I mean, so how it just doesn't feel right. Mom and dad, could you come to my civil union? Would you give me a way to unionize me? I mean, no, you go in with your parents and you say, Mom, this is the person I want to marry, right? And that's what I want for Todd. I want us to be able to walk down the aisle together in front of God and our community and our family and say, we are married. Not civil unioned or something close, but kind of not really. So I really look at it and I say, my mother is 84 years old. Her whole life, she's always said that I just want you to find someone you can be happy with and live out your life with. And she promised us when we were little kids that she would polka at every one of our weddings. I am the only child that she's never got to polka at my wedding. I don't think it's going to be the same if my mom polkas at my civil union. We're holding out for the whole thing and the right thing and the legal thing and the in front of God and our families thing.
And that's a good point, too, the language we use, because, if you're married and you mention your husband or your wife in conversation, you automatically understand the relationship. If I'm using a word like partner or domestic partner, people don't always understand what that means or what that signifies.
Yeah, business partner, what kind of partner is that?
Whereas if I say, my husband or my spouse, people automatically can make certain assumptions about the relationship in terms of the level of commitment and the foundation that exists for that relationship. And that is important.
So do you think there's a lot of groundwork to do is changing people's minds? And that's, do you think if the legal definition of it is allowed and you do hit that precedent, make that precedent, it'll kind of start a wave of changing people's minds, kind of like it did in the civil rights movement, where you had both legal acceptance of blacks and whites together, and then you had society kind of a backlash against that. Or do you think there's going to be friction following, even if it is legalized?
I really don't think it's so much about changing people's minds. It's about giving them more information. Most people, when they're given enough information to know us as human beings, realize what it is we're looking for. That we're not attacking their religion, that we're not after, as one commentator put it, the downfall of Western civilization. Right? That what we're really looking for is a committed relationship that's recognized by our family and in our church. Right? And most people can, once they get that information, they could say, oh yeah, sure, no problem. How does it do damage to me? I mean, so you get a couple tax breaks and, they put Mr. and Mr. on the envelope that goes to your house. That really isn't threatening to people. But I think the problem is that people don't get all the information. Someone who's very fearful of what this is going to lead to for them or has a morality issue around it is always the one out there putting up the barrier.